with a hatchet, Lizzie Borden's stepmother told a friend she believed someone was trying to poison her family. Fall River, Massachusetts, 1892. Andrew Jackson Borden had clawed his way from nothing into a fortune worth roughly $300,000, furniture, caskets, banks, textile mills. He owned commercial property across the city. Yet the house he kept his daughters in had no indoor plumbing, a detail that stood out even to neighbors, because Andrew was known as a frugal man in a wealthy man's world. His daughter Lizzie, 32, lived there with her older sister Emma and their stepmother Abby, whom their father had married 3 years after their mother's death. Lizzie called her Mrs. Borden. She later admitted she believed Abby had married Andrew for his money. The household also included Bridget Sullivan, a 25-year-old Irish maid, who testified that Lizzie and Emma rarely sat down to eat with their parents. Money had been splitting the family for months. Andrew had given property to Abby's relatives, a house to her sister, and when Lizzie and Emma found out, they demanded a rental property in return, a house tied to their late mother. They bought it from their father for $1, then sold it back to him weeks before the murders for $5,000. Their maternal uncle, John Vinicum Morse, arrived the night before the killings to discuss business with Andrew. What exactly they discussed is not recorded, only that the timing has never stopped raising eyebrows. Days before, the entire household had been violently sick. A family friend later blamed old mutton left simmering on the stove for days. Abby thought it might be poison. Given how many people in Fall River disliked her husband, she wasn't being paranoid for no reason. On the morning of August 4, 1892, Andrew and Morse sat together for nearly an hour before Morse left to buy oxen, promising to return by noon. Andrew went for his usual walk. Sometime between 9 and 10:30 that morning, Abby went upstairs to make the guest bed, a chore that belonged to Lizzie and Emma that week, not her. She never came back down. Her killer struck her from the front first, a blow above the ear that sent her falling face down onto the floor. Then came 17 more blows to the back of her skull. Andrew returned around 10:30. His key wouldn't turn in the lock. Bridget Sullivan went to let him in, found the door jammed, and swore under her breath. She testified that she heard Lizzie laughing from the top of the stairs at that exact moment, a claim that unsettled investigators later, because by then Abby's body was already on the floor of the guest room, visible from that vantage point. Sullivan said she helped Andrew off with his boots before he lay down on the sitting room sofa for a nap, though the crime scene photographs would later show him still wearing them. Around 11:10, resting in her third-floor room, Sullivan heard Lizzie call up the stairs, "Maggie, come quick. Father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him." Andrew was found slumped on the couch, hit 10 or 11 times. One blow had split an eyeball cleanly in half. He hadn't moved. He'd been asleep when it happened, and the wounds were still bleeding when the family doctor arrived from across the street. Investigators would later put his time of death at roughly 11 a.m., meaning barely 20 minutes had passed between his last living moment and his daughter's scream. Police searched the house. In the basement they found 2 hatchets, 2 axes, and a hatchet head with a broken handle, separated from its shaft. The break looked fresh. The dust and ash coating the head looked, to some investigators, deliberately applied, as though someone wanted it to seem forgotten down there for years. It became the leading candidate for the murder weapon, though no handle was ever matched to it and no blood was ever confirmed on the blade. Lizzie's account of that morning shifted depending on who was asking and when. First she told police she'd heard a groan, or a scraping sound, or some kind of distress call, before she found her father. 2 hours later she said she'd heard nothing at all, that she'd simply walked into the house without any sense that something was wrong. Asked where Abby was, she offered the same story each time. A messenger had brought a note asking Abby to visit a sick friend. No such note was ever found. No messenger ever came forward. Officers who questioned her that day used almost the same word to describe her: peculiar. Marshal Hilliard called her a very peculiar woman. Officer Seaver thought the killing was the work of someone mentally unsound. Judge Blaisdell, when asked to weigh in, put the real problem investigators faced into a single sentence: how could a woman have done this? That question shaped everything. Despite her contradictions, despite the shifting alibi, no one checked Lizzie for bloodstains the day of the murders. Police did search her room, but even they later admitted at trial the search was cursory. They claimed they held back because she wasn't feeling well. They were criticized for it afterward, and the criticism has followed the case for over a century. The one person whose story kept changing was the one person law enforcement treated most gently, on the day the evidence was freshest. Lizzie Borden was tried for the murders of her father and stepmother. She was acquitted. No one else was ever charged. She spent the rest of her life in Fall River, in the same town where the killings happened, under the same name the newspapers had made famous. She died of pneumonia on June 1, 1927, at the age of 66. 9 days later, her older sister Emma died as well. More than a century on, the hatchet head with the broken handle still sits at the center of the case's unfinished business, a weapon investigators favored, dusted with ash that may or may not have been staged, never definitively tied to either killing. The house on 2nd Street still stands in Fall River. You can walk through the same guest room where Abby Borden was found, and stand at the top of the same stairs where a maid says she heard someone laughing.